Now call to order the February 13th regular meeting of the Ann Arbor Historic District Commission. Ms. Thatcher, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Beeson.
Here.
Commissioner Epperson.
Here.
Commissioner Fortner.
Here.
Commissioner Hall. Commissioner Quijano.
Here.
Commissioner Rockland.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. I'd like to take a few minutes to outline how tonight's meeting will run. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Ann Arbor Historic District Commission. Each case will be called and we'll first hear the staff presentation and recommendations. Following this, the commissioners who served on the review committee will present their observations and recommendations. At this point, the applicant will have an opportunity to step forward and provide any comments or additional information about the application, and commissioners may ask questions. Once the applicant has finished, members of the public who wish to provide comments on the current case may do so, while please noting the time limit of 3 minutes per person. Everyone who steps forward will need to state their name aloud for the record and sign in at the sheet located on the podium, and limit their comments to the application at hand. Following any public comment, the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate the application, make a motion, have a discussion, and then vote. If any members of the public would like to speak to general preservation topics and not to any specific application, opportunity is provided during the public commentary following the approval of the agenda. Everyone who would like to address the commission may do so and will be asked to state their name aloud for the record and sign in at the front podium. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Your comments are valuable to the commission. I would like now to introduce the commissioners. I have on my far right, Commissioner John Beeson, Commissioner Bob White, Robert White. Myself, I'm Commissioner Anna Epperson. To my left, we have staff Jill Thatcher, and then Commissioner Jessica Quijano, Commissioner Catherine Fortner, and Commissioner David Rockland. All right, move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
Nope.
Hearing no objection, the agenda is approved as presented. Moving on to audience participation. Do we have any members of the public who would like to come forward and speak for the record on any preservation topics not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to any unfinished business. Is there no unfinished business? Okay, now on to hearings. Hearing F1. Ms. Thatcher, will you please give the staff report?
Sure. This is 804 South 1st Street. It's in the Old West Side Historic District. It's a 2.5-story gable fronter that features craftsman influences like 4/1 single and paired windows and a full-width front porch with tapered square porch posts on brick piers and a pediment inset on the shed porch roof. First appears in city directories in 1923 as the home of painter Gustav H. Hahn and his wife Elfreda. Hans lived in the home until at least 1940. And in 2014, staff approved an application to replace a portion of the rear basement wall. The rear window in this application was not affected by that work. So this is on the west side of South 1st Street, 2 houses south of Cook Avenue. The applicant is seeking HDC approval to convert 2 basement windows to egress windows, one on the north side and one on the rear with molded fiberglass wells. So looking at this photo, one of the windows is here, and I'll show you a better picture. It's this one right here. And the other window proposed to be made into an egress window is around the back. There's a better view of it. These are from the site visit on Monday. There are also more photos in the packet that the applicant provided. This is that front window. The proposal is to, the applicant is trying to create 2 new bedrooms in the basement, and they each require their own secondary means of egress, which means an egress window. You can see that these are simple 2-pane hopper windows. Wood, looks like they have old wood storms on. This is the back of the house. This staining is because there was a non-original aluminum awning that they recently took off. That's why it's discolored underneath it. But this is the other back window. Somebody poured a patio right up to it, which is a little bit strange, but it's a similar, it's not the exact same window because this center button isn't as wide, but it's a similar window. Proposal is to build one egress window with a well. Here, both windows match the width of the existing opening and just bring them deeper. That's always the preferred method so that it doesn't change the sort of symmetry that the windows have right now. And you can see where it's located here on the side of the house. The rear window the well doesn't seem to be drawn in here. Let me see if it's on a different one. Here, it's on this proposed foundation plan. Here's the one on the side of the house. Here's the one on the back of the house. Same thing, matches the window width and it just makes it deeper. You can see that there are mechanicals here, there's laundry and plumbing here, and they're going to put a bathroom where that existing plumbing line is already run. The reason they couldn't use this window, obviously, is because you can't manage to put a bedroom across the back of the building unless you move the furnace and the water heater and things like that. So that's a possible option. But staff didn't really think that it was that necessary. Part of the reason is because there's some well specs in there. It's the standard fiberglass well that we see a lot of. A cover is not proposed. Part of the reason that this is okay is because the building's up on a hill, the house, and yeah, it'll still be visible, but it's going to be less obtrusive to people walking or driving by because it's up on a little bit of a hill than if you were, say, at eye level or looking down on it. There are times when it's certainly not appropriate to put a window well this close to the front corner of the house. I think that this is pretty unobtrusive, and since they're matching the width of the existing window, I'd certainly rather have them put a couple bedrooms in the basement than try to put an addition on the back of the house, say. All right, so let me get to the standards. The Secretary of Interior standards that best apply are number 2, that says the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alteration of features, spaces, and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. Number 9 does not have a slide, but it says that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. And number 10 says new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. From the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for windows, it's recommended to design and install additional windows on rear or other non-character defining elevations if required by the new use. The design should be compatible with the overall design of the building but not duplicate the fenestration pattern of the character defining elevation. It's not recommended to introduce a new design that's incompatible with the historic character of the building. It's also not recommended to introduce new construction that's visually incompatible or that destroys historic relationships. That's more about relationships between the building and other things nearby, houses and structures and garages and fences. From the Secretary's guidelines for health and safety, it's not recommended to alter, damage, or destroy character-defining spaces, features, and finishes while making modifications to a building or site to comply with safety codes. So really the question at hand here is whether or not this window is a character-defining feature of the house or if putting in a window well here would be an inappropriate modification to the house. The windows that they're proposing to use are Pella-clad wood casement egress windows. They're 29 inches wide and 47 inch tall and fit in a 30 by 48 rough opening. Staff believes that the wells are appropriate if the glass is recessed to match the existing window glass, and that is a condition in the suggested motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. Commissioners Beeson and myself are on the review committee. Mr. Beeson, or Commissioner Beeson, do you want to start?
Sure. So the windows that we're looking at are in surprisingly really good shape for basement windows, and it's probably because they're on this elevated plinth of a site. Otherwise, they'd probably be tortured like everyone else's basement windows. The storm windows are okay, not too bad. And the basement window in the back, the storm window is not there, it's missing. The parge coating on some of the basement walls was starting to show some of its age. as is typical with a lot of these concrete foundation walls in the area. But by and large, we're trying to look around the area to see if this would affect much. We're trying to look at character-defining features of the house. Most of the house was clad in this aluminum siding, so any features that were there were kind of obscured if there was any wood detail. We also noticed that the soffit, you could see right underneath the soffit of the roof overhang there, was clad in this aluminum siding stuff as well. So it was kind of dropped, and we probably speculated about whether or not it had exposed rafters or not. Stuff like that would have been some of the details. But it being kind of covered up by aluminum didn't really show a lot of character-defining features that were unique to the house, other than it being one of the old typical houses in its layout on the in this historic district area.
I don't have a whole lot more to add. Ms. Thatcher showed the plan of where the two new rooms are going. These are really the only two places to actually put the window wells. The driveway side, the concrete goes right up to the foundation wall. There's one already going in the rear, and then, of course, the mechanical room. So the one toward the front is kind of the only other place to put it. I do think it being up higher on the hill, you're not going to notice it, be able looking down in it. I believe some of the other windows there were original, the wood windows with the, I think, 3-4 overlights on the top. But I don't have much else to add. Would the applicant please come forward and provide your name for the record, and please sign it?
My name is Ellen Pogreiner.
Do you have anything you'd like to add to the staff report or review committee report?
Nice.
Yeah, I'm her son. I'm just pulling up my notes here. So thank you for your consideration. We feel this project is immensely beneficial in our efforts as a city to fight affordability challenges. The city continues to see a population increase that has not been matched with an appropriate level of housing supply. The housing supply that has been implemented has been predominantly in the form of expensive high-risers and is cost prohibitive for many. This house will be occupied by graduate students and young professionals. Finishing the basement would seem to be the ideal plan that allows for the occupancy increase without compromising the integrity of the historical structure by means of an addition. It would also be pretty difficult for anyone to observe the windows due to the elevation, and there is a bit of a buffer there. And that's pretty much all we have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Oh, I have one.
You
Are you guys planning to keep the old windows, just put them up in the attic sort of thing? If you take them out, don't throw them in the dumpster maybe?
It's a good question.
It's one of these rare cases where we're just kind of like, it's just still an old functional window.
Yeah, well, it's actually a really good idea.
Just think about it, just throw it up there, and then someone finds it and like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
I've reused my old stuff that I found in my attic. So.
It's an extremely good idea. I think, yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Yeah. Okay, that's yeah.
That's it. Okay. Thank you. You may be seated. Moving on to the public hearing, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Okay. I will now close the public hearing portion of the application. Would any commissioners like to make a motion on this application? Commissioner Keown?
I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 804 South First Street, the contributing property in the Old West Side Historic District, to install 2 new basement egress windows and wells on the following condition: the glass is recessed to the depth of the existing window glass. As conditioned, the work is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the rest of the building and the surrounding area, and meets the Ann Arbor Historic District design guidelines, especially those for windows and safety codes, and the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular Standards 2, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for windows, neighborhood setting, and health and safety.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Quijano, seconded by Commissioner White. Is there a discussion on the motion? Commissioner Rathbone?
First of all, I just, for Ellen and her son, are you aware what the condition is in the motion that the plane of the glass of the new window should be in the same plane as okay, I just wanted to, just wanted to make that, circle back on that. I believe that this meets the standards as listed, 2, 9, and 10. You know, I'm seeing it up on this hill here, and I think that does weigh heavily, since maybe the setback isn't as far as in other houses we've seen where they want to put a window well in that location, so I think that helps them. And I think it meets the standards.
Further discussion? Are we ready for vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Okay, the motion carries. Your application has been approved. Please note that you must apply for any required permits from the city before beginning any work on your project.
Thanks.
On to hearing F2.
This is 410 South Division Street in the East William Historic District. This is a 2.5-story asymmetrical colonial revival home. It was built in 1897 for Werner Snaubel, a bookkeeper at Michigan Furniture Company. It features a pedimented clipped front gable and smaller street-facing attic gable below with a football-shaped architectural window and corner returns. And if anyone here knows the name of those windows, I would love to know it. There's got to be a better term than football-shaped. The foundation is cut stone block, and the half-width inset front porch features slender tapered round columns. On the south side is a pair of windows with a common arched transom, and that is quite a lovely window. It doesn't show up very well here. The window is beneath a small overhang with bracket trim. In August, the owner was granted permission by the ZBA to alter a non-conforming structure by adding 2 attic bedrooms, and the owner desires to reduce the number of units in the house from 4 to 2, with 4 bedrooms in the first floor unit and 6 bedrooms in the unit that spans the second and third floors. And this application is to install 3 skylights that are 30.5 inches by 46 3/8, one on each of the north and south side and west rear surfaces of the main roof. So one of the locations is here in ahead of the side gable. That's the first, let me just show you here, that's a lot easier. That's left side, which I would call the south side. This is the north side, and then there's one on the rear, and I'll show you where that is in just a sec. And this is the front. So 2 of these are pretty visible from the street because there's a lot of roof on this building and there's not much hiding it. The one on the back of the house will be completely invisible. It's back here, next to this sweet little gable dormer. The north roof face is even bigger and plainer. That's just to show you what's going on in the back and its relationship to the sides. So I already read you standards 2, 9, and 10. And the guidelines for roofs recommend identifying, retaining, and preserving roofs and their functional and decorative features that are important in defining the overall historic character of the building. This includes the roof shape, such as cupolas, cresting chimneys, and weather vanes, roofing material, as well as its size, color, and patterning. Not recommended is changing the configuration of a roof by adding new features such as dormer windows, vents, or skylights that historic character is diminished. Again, that's the key phrase of the evening. Do these skylights diminish the historic character of the building? Also recommended is designing additions to roofs, such as dormers or skylights, when required by the new use, that they are inconspicuous from the public right-of-way and do not damage or obscure character-defining structures. So the proposed windows would help fulfill code requirements for light and ventilation, as well as a means of emergency egress in 2 new attic bedrooms. They're operable, and the frames protrude less than 6 inches from the roof surface. Despite the fact that they're very visible from the street, staff does not believe the skylights will be a distraction or diminish the historic character of the building. The work is highly reversible. There really aren't many character-defining features that go along with this roof. There's not a cool chimney. There's nothing that's really being interfered with except an asphalt roof. I worry a little bit more about this uninterrupted roof plane because I think it will stand out a little bit more to have an egress window there.
Where is it on that? Can you go back to the elevation slide? Or I can look in my packet.
It's like
Where'd it go?
roughly in the middle.
Yeah,
Shown
it's
to
showing
be
it
smack dab in the
above
middle.
that larger center window.
And we don't have floor plans. do we?
I was just going to ask.
So it's pretty much
Check with the
centered.
applicant.
Yeah, you can check with the applicant in a minute.
Yeah.
All right, so staff does believe that the work meets the standards and guidelines in the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. Myself and Commissioner Beeson were on the review committee. I'll go ahead and start this one off. This is it's a pretty large, I guess, home on the site, and the site is pretty visible, I think, on the street, especially with the one lot next to it being open. But the condition of the property is, as you can tell, deteriorated in many ways. There's a lot of, the siding is, of course, not original, it's covered. But I do think that there are still some pretty neat historic features that are, and character-defining features that are still visible, especially some of the exposed rafters on the, just on that little second floor overhang beyond the porch itself. There's quite a few windows that are very unique, especially the one on the side. It has some little bit of leaded glass and some decorative elements to it. So I think each elevation itself has some pretty interesting character-defining features. I do agree that the roof itself is less of a character-defining feature, maybe more so in its shape than the actual roof plane. And as Ms. Thatcher stated, I think with the skylights themselves, they'll be a little bit less, they are a little bit less obtrusive as far as modifying roof structure goes, something that can be replaced or taken out in the future.
Yeah, so this is a pretty eclectic little house that we have here. It's pretty neat. It's, hasn't aged well, but it was pretty neat to see some of the details. I wanted to point out on the front elevation, I don't know if you've got a good front elevation photo, but some of the photos may show like the top floor, the very third floor. There's the window mutton patterns up there is pretty unique. Something you don't see very much on these houses. You could kind of see it on that front window right there, where they've divided it and they don't have a middle one and they just separate it. It was kind of neat to see that. So with that pattern showing up so pervasively on the front elevation, it's kind of, we could see that one of the windows with the upper sashes may have been removed and replaced at some point to remove some of that detail. But we could also see it on the south side showing up here and there. So it's just more kind of neat details. There's another one on the south side. I want to show another cool little detail for those that might appreciate it. How do I describe this the best? So right where the gable is kind of punching out, you could see that it's left hanging right at the edge of that. Yeah, right there, you could see it, and then go up a little bit. Right there, you see the little eyebrow that sticks out, and then it's repeated again at the front of the house. Just little stuff that you're like, oh, look at that. So, I think this house has full of those surprises, which to me makes me think that there was a lot of craftsmanship involved in this house, and underneath that siding may have some really unique wood features going on. Especially just the time spent to put those windows in and make them look different. Yeah, so there's a lot of character to the house. In terms of the roofs, yeah, there's really nothing that's defining the roofs, and I agree with what we kind of saw there from Commissioner Epperson, that the roofs themselves are fairly slate, boring kind of roof planes, I guess. But in light of, well, we'll bring this up after the motion, but yeah, that's all I said.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward and provide your name for the record and please sign it?
Good evening. I'm Scott Clausen, applicant for this project. I think Jill did a pretty good job with the report, as usual. What we're looking to do, obviously, is create more natural light, ventilation, and also some safety aspects for the rooms that are on the third floor or in the attic. The skylight that we chose is a low profile. I believe it comes up less than 6 inches off the deck. And it's also internally vented, which means that it doesn't have to flip open to vent. It doesn't need to be propped open. There's actually a lever inside it that you pull down, and it creates venting around the whole rim of the skylight. So this skylight is not meant to be propped open, so it'll always be down unless somebody's trying to get out. I think that's an important feature. And then the other thing is it can also be ordered in the color. It's a green shingle on there now. We can order it in that same color, so it blends more with the existing roof.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I had a question. It sounded like from the staff report that for 2 of the bedrooms, or 2 of the windows, we're going to provide secondary egress for the bedrooms.
Yes.
And then they were all going to provide light and ventilation, obviously. Is that light and ventilation a requirement, or is that just like, it's nice to have light and ventilation?
Well, it's nice to have.
Yeah, I got it.
We can do artificial light.
Okay.
But having natural light is.
I agree,
it's nicer.
100%. I just want to know, is it required or is it a nice to have? And then I know that egress is required, but it sounds like 2 of the 3 are required. So can you tell us which of the windows are the required for egress windows and which one is not required? And if there's one that's not required, why? Explain why you want it, please.
Well, so the north and south windows would also act as egress windows. The one in the rear is just additional light.
Okay.
Um,
Without floor plans, it's, these are
Oh,
the
yeah.
questions that I'm asking because there's no floor plan, so you're just providing the information.
Okay.
That's adequate. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Moving on to the, Moving on to the public hearing, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion of the application. Would any commissioner like to make a motion on this application? Dave?
Sure.
Okay.
Where is that? I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 410 South Division Street, a contributing property in the East William Street Historic District, to install 3 skylights as proposed. The work is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the rest of the building and the surrounding area, and meets the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, and particularly standards 2, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for roofs, windows, and building site, as well as the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines, particularly as they pertain to windows.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Rockland, seconded by Commissioner White. Is there a discussion on the motion?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
So, a few of us have already alluded to this, but I think in terms of this, between this and a dormer, this is definitely better than a dormer. Because, that flat roof, although not neat in any way, it's certainly a character-defining feature in having that big, expansive flat roof. So a dormer would certainly break that up, and it would change the character, because the dormers that exist on this house are very few and far between, and when they are there, they're kind of cute and quirky, especially like the one on the back. So I'm okay with the skylights as is, especially the low-profile aspect of them. You know, they will still have some shininess to them. They're going to be called out. Someone's going to see them. It doesn't really matter in my mind about that. It's really about whether it meets the guidelines. And so in terms of the guidelines, I think it's, you know, it meets the size, scale, and relationship. It doesn't just detract much from the other massive character-defining features of the house.
Commissioner Rackman.
I agree with what I'm hearing. I think that it will take away something from this house to see the skylights. I think a lot has already been taken away from this house. If someone wants to, you know, refurbish this house to its historic grandeur, the skylights, if they want to take them away, can be easily taken away. So that's good. That meets one of the standards, obviously. I was happy to hear that the non-egress window skylight was on the rear elevation. If it wasn't, I think that we may have a very serious discussion about what about that skylight. But I think that even though there's that very adorable dormer on the rear elevation, this might sort of take away some of that. It doesn't destroy that in my mind. So I guess that's my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments? You ready for a vote? All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. Okay, the motion carries. Your application has been approved. Please note that you must apply for any required permits from the city before beginning work on your project. Thank you. Now on to hearing item F3. Ms. Thatcher, will you please give the staff report?
This is 436 South 7th Street in the Old West Side Historic District. It's a 2.5-story gable fronter that features a full-width front porch with parged concrete walls and tapered square half columns, wide wood lap siding with mitered corners. A 2-story addition was built on the south side. You see it over here. Sometime after 1947. It is on the west side of South 7th Street between West Liberty and West Madison Streets. It's in the floodplain and partially in the floodway. And the applicant is seeking HDC approval to shorten the height of an original window opening by raising the sill 6 inches, that's this window here on the side, and to replace a rear window and opening with a new door and opening and in a small deck. So this window it's obviously pretty visible from the street. What they'd like to do is shorten it 6 inches to accommodate a new kitchen layout. And it's an old wood double-hung window. There is something in the staff report that the contractor thought at first that they were replacement sashes, but he confirmed that they are not replacement sashes. They're just old, you know, in old shape, neither terrible nor terrific. And then this is just around the corner on the back, same thing, old sashes. This is proposed to be replaced with a door leading to a very small 6x4 foot deck that's doesn't go all the way to the corner, and then a couple steps would come down to spit you out at the driveway. There's a back door here on the side, but it's one of those, you know, up and down stairwell doors, I would imagine, off the basement steps. And so this would be a little more practical to get in and out of the house, to be able to use the backyard. Site drawing, proposed 6x4 foot deck. And I really did measure these out to make sure that they were different. But it's only 6 inches, so it doesn't really show up. And here's the back. It's a single full light window door. There's door information in the packet. This is actually drawn with stairs dumping you out behind the house. The stairs would actually dump you out to the side toward the driveway. We confirmed that at the site visit. I don't think it really matters either way. It's such a small stoop. I think that it's appropriate, whichever way works the best. And there's some rail detail. It's appropriate. It's just simple 2x2 inch balusters. Yeah, this is the one that the contractor said they want to use. And then there's a small kitchen plan so you can see how the kitchen would work with the sink in front of the shortened window and the new back door. Door information, in there. The windows that are proposed to be used are clad, wood-clad windows. I believe that they're clad with aluminum, though I don't think I put that in the staff report. If the windows, if that one window is to be shortened, I think that that's appropriate, because once the opening is shortened, it loses some of its historic proportions, and then why put an all-wood window in there? So when I wrote up the staff report, I was sort of going on the basis that they were not historic sashes, so that does influence things a little bit. From the Secretary of Interior Standards, I read to you number 2. Number 5 says that distinctive materials, features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a property will be preserved. And I've already read you number 9. In the guidelines for windows, it's not recommended to change the number, location, size, or glazing pattern of windows through cutting new openings, blocking in windows, and installing a replacement sash, which does not fit the historic window opening. Also not recommended is removing or radically changing windows which are important in defining the historic character of the buildings, that as a result, the character is diminished. From the guidelines for accessibility, recommended is designing new or additional means of access that are compatible with the historic building and its setting. I think more appropriate is this: entrances and porches. It's recommended to design and install additional entrances or porches when they're required for the new use in a manner that preserves the historic character of the building. That is, limiting such alterations to non-character defining elevations. It's from the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines. It's appropriate to install a new porch and entrance on secondary elevations. It does not diminish the building's architectural character, and it's compatible with the building and the site.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Beeson and myself were on the review committee.
Can I go this time?
Sure.
Can we get a good front photo? Side. That one's good. So, okay, there's the house, standard good-looking house. Things I kind of want to point out was the window pattern. So typically, we might see houses that have a very rhythmic window pattern. And you can see on the front, it is fairly well balanced underneath the gable. And then on the side elevation, we've got it all over the place. And it made me think about how some of these windows have probably progressed over time, and some have been added, and that sort of thing. And even the gable up top, I'm even looking at the gable going, it doesn't seem to fit exactly. So it made me think that, a lot has certainly adapted and changed over time with this. And so that little window that they're trying to shrink up is another good example of how all these windows have different rhythms and different patterns. So it shrinking up a little bit more would not really be all that much noticeable. I think it would be pretty different if we had a whole rhythm of pattern of windows that were all pretty symmetric or what have you, and we were changing just one of them a little bit. It would still be kind of impactful. So that's one aspect. And then the porch on the back, having it there, I don't think really changes the character defining feature of the house in terms of the rhythm of these windows, because that one down there is a little off anyway. We did look to see, and we could see that it was kind of joined in at some point. It is a smaller window that was there. At one point, we could see some of the siding that was replacing it. So you can tell there was at least a window there at some point. We don't know the exact size of it, but so putting a door into that area and how it aligns would all just change the overall appearance a little bit, that we could talk more in the motion side of things. But that's generally what we saw, right?
Yes.
Okay, you can
I
add.
agree. I agree with both Ms. Thatcher and Commissioner Beeson. The only thing I just thought that I had regarding, I think, as Commissioner Beeson stated, shortening the window I don't think is really a big deal, especially due to the changes in the rhythm and heights of these windows. But it will be a new window, so we're basically just scrapping the existing original window. That was, it being on a side elevation, it makes me pause a little bit, but it is toward the rear. I would say it's the, most character-defining window of the house at all. So I think in that sense that it's okay, but just something to think about. The deck is completely inconspicuous from the street view. Maybe you might see the stairs kind of peeking out through at the end of the driveway there, but I think it's It's fairly small. I noticed the neighbor has actually a pretty large deck on their property in the back and the rear. But I think overall, this pretty much falls within the guidelines. Would the applicant please come forward, provide your name for the record, and please sign in? And then if you have anything to add to the staff report or review committee report.
Tim Rayburn, I'm the builder for the project. You guys have handled it fine. Good job. Do you have any questions for me?
Commissioners?
Just clarification. So the 48 inches that's referenced here, that's the height of the window opening. What's the sill height from the floor?
Going to be just above the new countertop, so like 42,
The new countertop height is 42?
36, so we're going to be just like 6 inches above that.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're just getting just enough to get above that countertop.
okay. Thank you.
Just curious, what is in that dormer there, that there's the louvers, and is it access to the attic, or?
I haven't made it up there.
Okay. None of my
Good
business
question,
then,
though.
thank you.
I was wondering myself. I
Sounds
think it's
to
a
be
bat
able to
house.
be a giant bat house, yeah.
Yeah.
It would work
Looks
really
like a
well
bat
with
house,
that,
yeah.
yeah. Same question I had with a previous applicant. Are you going to try and keep the sashes? the
Yes,
original ones?
yes, for sure.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Right. Moving on to the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion of the application. Would any commissioner like to make a motion?
So I can do it. All right. I move that the commission, off the top of my head, I'll just say this aloud, right? I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 436 South 7th Street, a contributing property in the Old West Side Historic District, to shorten the height of original window opening by raising the sill 6 inches and installing a new aluminum-clad window, and to replace a rear window and opening with a new door and opening and a small deck. The proposed work is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the rest of the building and the surrounding area, and meets the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular standards 2.5 and 9, and the guidelines for windows, accessibility, and entries and porches, as well as the Arbor Historic District design guidelines, particularly as they pertain to residential porches.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Beeson, seconded by Commissioner White.
Jill, did you get the aluminum clad versus vinyl clad?
Yeah, I'm
that's
just
written
looking
in
that
here?
up in the
Is
packet.
it, though?
Yeah,
It's
it says aluminum.
Anderson 400.
Yeah, I saw in the packet was aluminum clad.
That's,
it's
the
on-
door has aluminum-clad jambs.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
That's
this
why I-
page?
Yeah, doesn't that say?
True.
It-
If you need to, yeah, come on up. Otherwise, we're going to ask you, so.
The Anderson is actually in the packet, it's actually a vinyl clad window,
Okay,
Okay,
white clad window with a wood interior.
okay.
okay,
So we'll go back to what the original.
yeah.
Thank you.
A friendly amendment change, I guess.
Scratch it, reverse it.
Is there a discussion on the motion?
I always thought there was something with the vinyl clad issue. Is that no longer, or am I just dating myself on this commission?
In terms of appropriate?
Right.
Yeah. Appropriateness of material selection for window cladding. No?
You mean versus aluminum
Yeah.
or versus no cladding? Personally, I kind of prefer vinyl because sometimes you get more of a profile. The aluminum often ends up just looking flat on the exterior, more like a commercial window.
Okay.
But I haven't done that exercise either in years, to look at them both side by side.
Okay. Maybe that's what it was about a long time ago.
Yeah, maybe.
Something about how it finished off or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Okay, yeah, so I'm okay with, the amendment there.
Any other discussion? Everyone ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 All those opposed, please say no. The The motion carries. Your application has been approved. Please note that you must apply for any required permits from the city before beginning work on your project. Thank you. All right, on to hearing F4. 12 South Ashley Street. Ms. Thatcher, will you please give the staff report?
This L-shaped two-story brick commercial building was built in 1918, and the first occupant was Procknow's Garage. The front facade was remodeled in 1975 by Ed Nally with new brick, shortened second-floor windows, and an all-new first-floor storefront. I think that the windows on the second floor actually weren't shortened. I think it's just, once I found an original photograph, I think I was mistaken. Photo from 1973 is at the end of the report. I'm sorry I don't have that in the staff report, but you can see the original garage opening. And despite the changes to the facade, the building is a contributing historic structure in the Main Street Historic District. So what you're looking at here on the front, really nothing original about it at all. The window openings on the second floor, when they put the new brick facade on, veneer on, it seems to have gotten a little narrower, like this in between is a little bit wider, and these are a little wider. So these are slightly narrower overall. So originally, there were 4 1-over-1 windows in this space, and they're proposing to put in 3, which I think is appropriate, given that it's a little bit narrower than it used to be. And then, obviously, nothing down here is original. The photo from 1975 or 1973 is kind of telling. You can see how it used to have some interesting little details, even though it's a pretty modest building. Here's the side. It's this sculpted block, and that goes all the way around the side of the building. One of the work items they'd like to do is to remove this third floor, which is not constructed very well, from what I understand from inspectors, and replace it with a smaller, just a doghouse on the roof for the stairs to exit out of, with a small roof deck, a couple of skylights, and then a fenced-in area behind the new building to put mechanicals in. There's a gate here. There are stairs going down. This hill slopes off very steeply. It looks like a small 2-story building from here, but when you get around to the back, it's a big building. And you can see the L shape here where it very oddly kind of juts out. This part, I believe, is behind Hathaway's Hideaway, which is completely surrounded on 3 sides by other buildings. And there's just the little top of that third floor that was added on at some point. This third floor that exists is from the period of significance. You can see it on or assumed to be, you can see it on 1948 aerial photos, but there's really nothing character defining about it. I never even knew it was there until I had to look really hard to take these pictures to see it. Lots of windows have been replaced. I think all the windows have been replaced on the front and the back and the side. This is an existing fire egress stair that was recently rebuilt in exactly the same location. And the applicant is seeking approval to remove that rooftop structure and replace it with a smaller stair enclosure. Build up the roof 1 foot 8 inches from the existing roof plane. Let's keep going through these a minute, and I'll tell you that when we get to it. So here's the proposed, some perspective drawings. We've got these windows with operable lower small sashes and a large expanse of glass on the first floor, and the glass goes almost all the way to the ground, which is kind of interesting. And then here you can see the smaller roof enclosure. And then right up here, this is really the best drawing to see it. There's the roof is built up, and I really need the applicant to talk about that a little more because it wasn't clear why they're building that up. I'm sure it's required for some reason, I just don't know what it is. And it's also inset slightly from the corner, and I'm not sure why that is. And it doesn't go all the way to the back of the building, it stops about here. But that shows up better on the elevation drawings. There is, at your seat, a set of handouts. The architect updated them and sent them to me a couple days ago, so they're not in the slideshow, but you should look at them here. They do have clouds for all the changes, and there were some clarifications. And the red lines are turned off, which makes them a little bit easier to read. So if we're looking at something specific, we should jump back to those. Existing south elevation, this is the side facing the little houses that march down Ashley. This would be much shrunk. It's a little bit taller, but, you know, it's so far back on the building, it's not really going to matter. Small patio, fenced in, a couple of skylights. All of these windows are shown as double hungs, and I don't know that any of them are double hungs right now, so I would like confirmation of whether or not those are being replaced. And if so, with what? I think it would be great if they were all replaced. This is the proposed north section. There's an existing north section in the new handouts. And then we've got the west elevation on the back. Both the existing and the proposed show the same windows, so that's why I'm a little bit confused, since there are all kinds of windows on the back right now. This structure on the third floor, it's going to be a little more visible from the back because it's a little bit taller, but this is just a big parking lot down by Schlenker's Hardware. It's common for several properties, and you might see it from West Liberty if you looked really hard. You might see the one that's there today if you looked really hard, but I really don't think that it's going to detract from anything. Roof plans, already described to you, and some mechanical units. Yeah, this is Hathaway's Hideaway right now, the old Second Ward Public Building. There's some photos of what's up there now. Guardrail details. And then there are some basic floor plans in the packet. Another part of the application is for signage. This is an example of a laser cut address sign that would go on the front at the top. And this is an example of signs, letters that would be pin mounted into that stepped brick on the front. And I'm going to go back up there so you can see that. So you can see how the brick steps up here. This is a whole little bump out, and actually this is some trim and some dentils. It would be up here that the sign is proposed to go. And then this is the, I can't remember what they call those, the name of the building, which would be replaced with that laser cut address sign. So, and the sign on the first floor above the storefront is just there as a placeholder so that I can staff approve something that comes in at that size or smaller if this passes tonight. I do think that it's appropriate, and this is a big panel, but it's kind of looks like it's already pulling out of the building, and I don't mind if it's replaced with the address sign. Again, this is not an original storefront at all. We're just trying to get a little bit closer, but really you can't even really simulate the original at all. With what we're working with here. So really, it's to be compatible with other older structures in the district and not detract from them. I really don't think that any of the changes proposed will have anything but good effects on the neighbors. This is a rather homely remodel to this storefront. So I think that everything that's proposed is a good idea. There were just a couple of questions outstanding about the work. Let me see if I missed anything in the staff findings. A small improvement that I have not talked to the applicant at all about might be to use equal-size sashes on these front windows. But again, since this whole front facade of the building is so modern, I don't think it's that important because it's still not going to get much of the historic character back. It's most important that they're using the existing opening size. And the storefront's pretty cool. It's pretty simple. It's aluminum. It was a dark color, if I remember correctly. Black matte finish, insulated glass. I really like the transparency of it. And yeah, I think that it's appropriate and pretty low-key. So really, staff finds the work as conditioned. What was the condition? Oh, that the signs were mounted through mortar joints, not masonry units, is appropriate and meets the standards and guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. Commissioner Beeson and myself were on the review committee. And we would
You wanna go
start
again?
this.
Or do you want to go?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big building. Oh, it does not appear to be, just from the initial facade of the street. But it goes back pretty far on the lot. The lot's pretty deep. It's interesting. We spent a lot of time in the front just kind of trying to look at the existing facade. As Ms. Thatcher indicated, it's not original. It was done in the 60s? 70s. And it actually kind of the brick itself wraps around the CMU, and I don't know if we have it's kind of hard to tell from this photo, but it extends past that sculpted block a little bit and kind of hugs the facade. So it's really just kind of tacked on. And there's an existing steel lintel now, kind of demarcating that overall height of the, at the top of the transom window there. So I think as far as everything goes with the storefront, what's being proposed, it's pretty much falling within the proportions, the scale and massing of what we would normally see in a storefront itself. The building is pretty much sculpted block with some other CMU block. Walking around the back of the building, it's 3 stories. It's pretty expansive. Again, more punched openings. That addition on the top, or that third story piece, it's actually, although it's pretty big and it comes forward, you don't notice it that much at the beginning, but then you start looking, you start seeing all these other little features. But there aren't a whole lot of other character-defining features of the property itself. So I think a lot of what is being proposed is, scaling back the addition and adding more, I would say, historically compatible scale is, I think, appropriate.
Sure. Yeah, the building's big. I mean, it is a solid 3 stories you can see in the back, and then with this roof thing on top, it's, almost 4 stories right downtown. It's kind of weird tucked away in there. It has a terrible water mitigation going on with the whole thing. Can you go to the front elevation again? Okay, so that roof thing was actually there already, see it up there? So Jill, you had thought that was being added or something?
No, I think it's still being added.
There's a state.
On top of it? Well,
Yeah, on top of
because I
it.
see it as drawn here, and
No,
I think they're just cleaning it, because it just, we'll ask him when he comes up.
Yeah, you're looking too far up on that picture. You're looking on top of the
Down here.
doghouse. Yeah, down there.
Yeah, and this just says ELA 8, and ELA 8 was just existing roof facade to remain, no parapet and paint. So I think they're just leaving that is, but it's still, it's like something was added across this whole roof to give it some slope. So there's no parapet walls, so you can see this like cascading gutters along the side, which are all not working great. So, the building is being addressed on kind of a aesthetic scale of some windows and fixing the roof access, but in terms of like the water treatment on actually protecting it and maintaining the formed blocks, especially those, when those get water in them, they start spalling like mad. So to me, there's not a lot of work being done to kind of address the water issues of the building, but here, this application is really just trying to hone in on getting some of the basic aspects of it going, like make it a rentable property again, maybe, or something. Okay, so that's one part of it. The brick on the outside, on the front facade, was definitely added. There's this giant lintel, steel lintel, that goes across the whole front of it, right at that elevation. And it's kind of the old version of steel lintels with no weep holes and flashing. So that has some building science issues in my mind. So I feel like if they're going to do anything in the storefront, we're going to ask the owner when they come up about that aspect. So it's kind of a neat little building that we don't really notice very much. So now you will start noticing it. So yeah, that's my report. Not more than needed, but I
With
got
applicant,
excited.
thank you. Would the applicant please come forward and provide your name for the record and please sign it? And if you have anything to add to the staff report or review committee report.
Chris Biggers, Milford, Michigan, big architecture. This building's obviously like kind of a little two-story, but it's full of surprises. So to clarify on first, like since you got that facade up, that top white part, we're just going to clean that up. We're not planning to increase the roof height on that front, and if you can go to like a little side shot, the side corner. We're not going to touch the roof that starts from the facade up to the current 3-story building. So that roof will sort of stay in the exact same, we're not touching the structure right there. So we'll just clean up that little area, that little top area, and then try to reroute the water as best we can. And if you go back to the front facade, we're going to have to add new lintels to hold up that whole entire storefront. So we'll fix all the brick, get the weave holes and flashing all in the right spot at that time. So we'll be able to resolve some of that. As far as the side and rear windows, our intent is that we want to replace them all with the same window. And so that's why we're just showing a double hung on all the sides. I don't know if the historic has any suggestion on what windows, if we just replace them as aluminum like that, or if double hungs, just a window would be, if any, difference. It's because it's kind of like no windows is the same, and we want to make them all the same one.
You tell us, you propose something.
Oh,
and then
yeah,
we'll
well, we're
respond, yeah.
proposing the double hung, so I don't know if there's any issue with that. We want operable windows up there and give it a little less commercial feel on the sides. And then those gutters and all that, we're gonna redesign that roof where the old 3rd story was to help reroute the water on the other directions. And then obviously the rear, we kind of need the guardrails because we're gonna put rooftop units up there, and that'll kind of act as a screen and a safety, resolving safety issues. So we're cleaning this thing up as best we can. I mean, there's even a basement below that floor there too, so it's even, there's even a whole nother level down below, so it's a crazy little building.
Is the basement under the whole thing, Chris? The whole L shape? Wow.
Yep, it's got like poured concrete below that basement, and then there's that level, which on the Ashley side is actually the basement to that level. So right now it's like 5 stories, and we're cutting it down and we're only using the little roof to access all the mechanicals and the patio on the roof. So that's the intent of the upper doghouse.
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
So right now, this image shows the railing going all the way around, which, keep this photo.
Okay.
So that means the railing would be continuous along this image. So we would really see that railing from here. In fact, that would be the biggest part that we would see at this elevation. So where are the mechanical units actually being located on that portion?
They're actually, if I can show you in that.
In this packet? Well, we'll go to, can we go to, or is there a floor plan that can, roof plan. Yeah, here's one.
We're trying to keep them up in this section of the roof. We're gonna try and push them forward, but we need at least 10 feet. We'd like to, if we can eliminate them, if we can get this one closer here, we could eliminate the guard. The only reason the guard's there is really because we're too close to the edge of the building.
Okay.
So if we can squeeze these up here with the engineer, we could possibly eliminate this whole, we could actually probably eliminate the whole thing, and would prefer to. But we're showing it in case, as the worst case, because we have 3 units now. I think the engineer's gonna have, we're gonna get down to 2 units for sure. So if we can get these things located away from the edge of the roof, we will. We don't want to, I mean, we don't want to do that because it's so noticeable, but we
There will
may
be.
have to do it.
Okay. And then the roofing material on the new on the new little doghouse thing, is that it's drawn as kind of a standing seam, just straight?
Yeah,
line?
we were going to do it as, we're going to do that as a standing seam, and then do the rest of it as an EPDM or membrane.
Okay. Those are my questions for now.
Any other questions?
On the long facade on the side where you're going to replace the windows, what type of windows are you proposing?
We had a vinyl clad wood window.
Okay.
It's sta-
Another question.
Go ahead.
All right, for this, jumping to the sign, do we want to talk about the sign right now, or, I
Yep.
have a sign question.
Sure.
Will there also be, for the storefront, is that going to be illuminated? And if so, how are you providing electrical to the illumination? Really, the question is that going to be concealed, or are you going to have conduit running on the exterior?
I guess the idea is we'll put a box, because we don't know the tenant name just yet. We'll put a box right in the center behind the sign and have it just lighted letters sticking up off the sign. So like we could put the electrical through to a junction box, and then the sign can go over top of it.
Okay.
On this elevation, I think we had a question when we were out there. We're going to need a mouse here, Jill.
Okay.
Where it's on the first floor, where it says equal, equal on either side, the right and the far left, we were
Ye-
contemplating the depth. What was
We-
Yeah,
that?
here, equal.
Well, it's,
Equal.
the building is like not centered,
Yeah.
so
like-
that little extension is there. We're trying to make it centered if we can on those sides of that storefront
does that
from
mean
the
you would-
front facade, so,
Would you trim down one side?
yeah, of
Okay.
the storefront side, inside the storefront.
Yeah, so right here.
Yeah,
This
we're gonna
this
try
sort of
and,
column would be narrower.
yep, we're gonna try and cut that back a little bit, and we're gonna stick 2 columns in each side of the opening and run our beam
Okay,
inside it, and the storefront will hide the
Okay.
column.
all right.
Yes, it's an odd geometry, because the one side, from the front, it looks symmetrical, but actually, it's not symmetrical in the building, because it sticks out.
Yeah. All right, I know that we had that question when we were out there.
Yeah, so we're gonna stick a column on each side and one in the middle, a steel column, and cover it with aluminum.
Gotcha.
Just to circle back, and you may have noted this, or mentioned this, where it's just stated here, you'll build up the roof 1 foot 8 inches from the existing roof plane. Can you just clarify which roof plane that is?
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that was my error.
Okay.
I think that's what Chris was talking about when he
Okay.
said
So
they're
it's-
not building up the roof.
What happened is, like, when you look at the front elevation, there's a roof coming, and the 3rd floor is actually, like, you can't see it from any view, but it's actually sunk, it's inside underneath the roof line. So we're just gonna try to match that level. So it may actually not be as tall as what's shown, but it may actually be a few inches shorter once we get the new steel and floor engineered for the new roof.
From that third, from what you were saying, like if we look
So-
at the picture on the left, or
Yeah, if you see the
Yeah.
picture on the left, see the line towards the front?
yeah, right before the skylights.
That's like the existing roof line.
And that's
then
not
where
changing.
where that hits, the bearing is actually a little bit lower. The 3rd floor is actually was lower
Okay,
than that point. So we're trying to keep that level.
okay. So it looks like, in the existing photos, the gutters sort of step down in the back, but on this, they look like they're continuous. Is there an intent to change those?
Once
or-
we get that little roof designed, we're gonna try and keep the gutters and clean up try and
So- okay.
route the water in a better way.
Okay.
We're
So
gonna
what's
try
shown
not to,
here in
like,
the-
We're gonna
Okay.
try and fix that whole side up.
Okay, so what's shown here in the new drawings is what you're proposing?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna try and get it cleaned up on the side.
And is that then, since it pitches in the middle, the high point is in the middle, that means you're going to have gutters on both sides?
We'll probably have two sides,
Two sides?
gutters go on the side, but for the right side, we gotta get the water
Funky.
not going on the building. There's a building, and actually below, on the right building, it's only two-story for a little while, and there's actually a pit, like, from the first floor roof of the second building. It's a kind of interesting intersection of buildings. Because this building actually does connect to, the owner actually owns the whole U shape. And the building on the right is actually inside the U.
Yeah, I was looking
Yeah, it's one U-shaped parcel. Yeah,
Yes, it's a
very
U,
weird.
yeah, he owns the whole U shape and someone else owns the middle.
Yeah,
Blimpie's the other
yeah,
side.
Blimpie's the other side, yeah. Or no, I'm sorry. it's not.
Cosmos?
Cosmos, yep.
Cosmos.
Yes.
So these technically hit each other, you can now technically cut through to that Cosmos.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah, so it also has that same brick
Mhm.
in front.
70s.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Nope.
Just one thing, if the owner ever decides that he wants to open up any of those windows on the side that are infilled,
Mhm.
super easy staff approval.
Okay,
We'd love to see that happen.
all right, we'll let him know.
Okay.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Oh, I have
You
a
do.
question
Yeah.
popped up. So on the page, it shows the
come
windows
back.
with the double hung. It does say aluminum clad.
Yeah.
This page.
What
Oh,
page are you
I'm
looking
sorry.
at?
Vinyl.
I'm sorry, vinyl aluminum clad.
Okay.
Sorry.
Good.
Oh,
All
no,
right.
okay.
Okay, that's fine, then.
And that would be for all replacement?
All,
Okay.
all room windows.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing portion of the application, public hearing portion of the application. Would any commissioner like to make a motion on this application? Commissioner Portman?
I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 312 South Ashley Street, a contributing property in the Main Street Historic District to, 1, remove the third floor rooftop structure and replace it with a smaller stair enclosure and patio. 2, build up the roof 1 foot 8 inches from the existing roof plane. 3, replace the upper windows on the front elevation with aluminum windows. 4, replace the existing storefront with a new aluminum and glass storefront system. And 5, install 2 signs on the front elevation, on the condition that the signs are mounted through the mortar joints, not masonry units. The work is conditioned is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the rest of the building and the surrounding area, and meets the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines for storefronts, windows, additions, and signs, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation and Guidelines for Rehabilitating Historic Buildings, in particular Standards 1, 2, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for storefronts, windows, building site, alterations for a new use, and additions.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Fortner, seconded by Commissioner White.
Just
Yes.
one correction, if you'd like to make a friendly amendment. We should have struck number 2 and renumbered the ones after it, because there isn't any roof work proposed.
There's the.
Well, there's,
I mean, there's not building it up 1.8 feet,
Yes.
or 1 foot 8 inches.
Build up to match existing. There,
Do you want to renumber the other ones?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
proposing that you strike 2 and then make the other ones 2, 3, 4.
do we need to
Okay.
add, though, the replacement of all windows on the facades, or does that need to go under different?
And the railing?
Well, I don't think those things need to all be listed out, because there's lots of things, like the skylights aren't listed here, the railing's not listed here, because they're shown. I wish that they had been on the original application, which would make it a little bit clearer, but I really don't think you need to list everything.
Okay.
But feel free to if that makes you more comfortable.
So the amendment. We're just gonna strike the numbers.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a discussion on the motion?
Yes. I'm trying to find the guideline portions of it, though, so it may take me a little while. Well, the railing on the back is mine, my sticking point, but I'm trying to find it in the guidelines, so give me a second. If there's other stuff to talk about, which I'm sure there might be, I could bring up some other things. Like I'm good with the window replacements. I think that'll certainly help to provide a really good rhythm if they all look the same and are the same material and that sort of thing. Glad to hear that they're aluminum. That way they match the storefront aluminum, and that kind of characterizes all the way through. It's kind of office, more environment. The doghouse on top seems okay to kind of scale it the way it is. The storefront adjustments seem all right too, especially since this is not an original storefront to begin with. I think that was all the major issues, wasn't it? I think it was. Yeah. Oh, and the signs, yeah, the way that the signs are being located seems okay too. I was gonna add the mortar joint thing, and it looks like it's already in there, and that seems good too. So I'm gonna keep looking at this about the railing issues.
Is there any other discussion in the meantime?
Well, I think the railing, he's gonna shrink it down as much as he can, but part of that's a safety issue.
Yeah, but as it stands now, if we approve this, he could build it all the way across. Right?
I don't know if that's his plan.
That may not be his plan, but he can.
That would be the worst case scenario.
I just would like to comment that I appreciate the effort being made to bring some order back to this elevation, even though, it's kind of been modified quite a bit over its lifetime. Especially the first floor storefront area, it could have been done in a different way, and it's kind of bringing back the order that it may have had originally, not garage doors, but that the center column and the kind of the symmetric composition of it, kind of correcting what was done before.
Well, why don't we bring him back? If you have the question, he can answer the question. Okay, you want to bring him back?
Can you bring up that? Yeah, can you bring up the rear elevation?
Yeah.
While he's coming up.
The requirement for a barrier there is anything, if a rooftop unit is like within like 10 feet of a roof. So we could say that a barrier would be provided only within 10 feet of the mechanical unit. I mean, then we will just only make it as minimal as it needs to be. The other options could be with a glass option, or it technically only has to be a safety rail, which it doesn't have to have all the horizontal lines. It could just be a safety rail, so it'll be guard with one
Yeah.
line and that. So
Yeah, any of
we
those
could do a
things-
simpler one.
Any of those things would probably make it less, outstanding and a little more.
Yeah, we could do the
conspicuous.
very minimal barrier possible. So we could just make it one rail with one middle horizontal and the lines that meet OSHA.
Yeah, can you go to the
Standards.
photo that shows that rear? So it comes down to, this has been kind of the theme all night, about the character defining features, right? And here we have a rear elevation with kind of a hodgepodge of, well, what is character defining feature of this building? And it's like, well, if this railing does go up there, would it really destroy the character defining feature? Well, it might. It would certainly change the size, scale, and relationship of how the building reads.
I mean,
That's the part
the
that we're
owner,
kind of look at, the
the owner
guidelines to make
definitely
this
would
decision.
not want to pay to do it all if he doesn't have to. But then if we only do a little bit, like 20-foot section up there, is that worse than all the way around?
Yeah, that's entirely subjective. I would say it's, to me, right now, it's trying to find where in the guidelines it would say, can't have this railing because it's going to destroy the character defining features of the building, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. And so she's bringing out the design.
I'm wondering
What are
about
you-
safety and health.
Yes,
We're
if
gonna
it's
have
safety and health standpoint, we need something.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a beautiful railing. I mean, it could be anything to stop them. It could be glass, it could be just a couple bars. We could,
Chris, how much clearance do you need around the air handling units?
well, 3 feet, probably,
Yeah.
all the
So-
way around it.
So the
We could-
railing could be as close to the
we
units
could
as
do-
3
We
feet?
could do that. We could
Right.
offset it
Yeah.
and try and keep it as close to the
Yeah.
rooftop as
Because,
possible.
like,
in a
we'd
way-
see it in the drawn elevation, but in the
Yes.
actual
Right.
perspective of standing on the sidewalk and looking up the building, if you're putting it 3 feet, we're not even gonna see it.
We could do that. We could just say it'll be only in the minimum clearances around the unit to access.
That's much better.
How about
That's
that?
good.
Much better, yeah.
And
Because
then-
if it's right to the building edge, or right now it's drawn, a little back from the edge.
Yep.
But if you could move it as back as you can and as close to the units as you're allowed, that would be better, because it would definitely fade away a little better.
Yep, and
not
since-
make it shiny materials.
Yeah, and since it's the 3 units were shown, we're actually got down to 2 units, so we're actually already,
Yeah.
should be able to cut it back.
You hear that, Jill?
Find something.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, it's kind of general. Using compatible screening around mechanical equipment, but this is more for stuff on the ground, such as vegetation and fencing. Installing new air conditioning units and related mechanical equipment in such a manner that historic materials and features are not damaged or obscured. Installing mechanical equipment and wiring in locations on the roof, rear elevations, or in alleys so they are not visible from a street. Yeah, they're all pretty general about not changing or destroying character-defining features and materials.
yeah, and that's how the health and safety one mentions things as well. Identifying the historic building's character defining spaces, features, and finishes so that code-required work will not result in their damage or loss. Complying with health and safety codes, including seismic codes, in such a manner that character defining spaces, features, and finishes are preserved. Yeah.
So
Same
just
kind
do
of
the minimum
Safety rules.
safety request.
Yeah, so we put it the minimum to allow access to
Yeah.
mechanical
The 3
equipment.
feet or whatever.
The
Minimum
minimum,
is required.
the smallest railing system as far away from the edge as possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
To do that.
Who made the motion?
Yes.
Catherine,
Ready to do that?
Amend.
can you amend the motion?
the,
so that- yeah.
Then we get the other,
Oh, yeah, we can strike.
Yeah, and we'll make the numbering change.
yes.
So we're adding a condition
Yes.
after the signage.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll amend the motion. I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 312 South Ashley Street, a contributing property in the Main Street Historic District to, 1, remove the third floor rooftop structure and replace it with a smaller stair enclosure and patio. 2, replace the upper windows on the front elevation with aluminum windows. 3, replace the existing storefront with a new aluminum and glass storefront system. And 4, install 2 signs on the front elevation. On the condition that the signs are mounted through the mortar joints, not masonry units, and that the railing required for the rooftop mechanical units will be installed as far from the roof edge as is allowed by safety code.
Correct.
Nice.
Well done.
The work is conditioned as compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the rest of the building and the surrounding area, and meets the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines for storefronts, windows, additions, and signs, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation and Guidelines for Rehabilitating Historic Buildings, in particular Standards 1, 2, 9, and 10, and the Guidelines for storefronts, windows, building site, alterations for a new use, and additions.
Support.
The motion has been amended by Commissioner Fortner and supported by Commissioner White. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay. Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, say no. The motion carries. Your application has been approved. Please note that you must apply for any required permits from the city before beginning work on your project.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. Moving on to item G, new business.
The first item is a revised conflict of interest policy. So we are a certified local government. We are certified by the State Historic Preservation Office, and they require, as part of their CLG standards, that we use their conflict of interest policy. I had the city attorney's office read it, and all he said was, it says pretty much the same thing in a lot more words, so it's fine.
Okay.
So I would like you guys to approve this, and then when we change our, at our annual retreat, when we change our bylaws and things, we can incorporate this in, yeah.
I make a motion that we approve and revise the conflict interest policy at draft by Michigan State Historic Office of Preservation.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner White and seconded by Commissioner Beeson. All those in favor, say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question about this now that we've approved it.
Any
What-
discussion?
What is the Historic Preservation Fund?
That's what funds the SHPO.
Okay,
It's the federal program that funds the SHPOs.
okay, so is it specific? I guess I was just curious about like what conflicts of what interest to what?
Well, they spell it out in here, though some of it's, it's a little bit clunky because it feels like it's written for state employees.
Yeah, okay.
But this is the one that they gave us, that they told us that we need to adopt.
So, but what if one of us on the commission wants to work on a project where we're trying to get landmark status? Is that's what I was like curious about, like our work that we're all doing on the side. I understand about conflicts of interest that come before this panel. Is it
Yeah.
just referring to that, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's
It
not
seemed
your-
very broad,
It's
like
not
you,
your professional, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
conflict
it's.
of
it's very
meant for
specific to the
SHPO.
hearings coming before us.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I understand
Hearings
that.
and decisions.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Okay, next G2, annual retreat scheduling. Hooray, it's that time of year. Everyone pull out your calendars.
Let's do it.
The sooner the better for me.
Okay.
As last year, when the pike season starts up, I'm out.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Which is what happened last
Typically, we do this on a Saturday morning from about 9 to noon.
Bob's not here, though. He just went to the bathroom.
Okay.
Snuck out.
So if you'd like, we can look at the end of February. Except then, shoot,
I'm out that weekend.
okay.
I mean, we're never gonna
You're
find
gonna-
one.
Yeah, I
but
know it, I know it. Then we also have to look at spring break, which is that would be the weekend of the 28th of March.
I can't do it 28th.
Can't do March 7th?
March 7, I could do if I bring my,
That's before the madness
7-year-old
starts,
with me.
right? Bob's here.
What?
oh yeah, is that the Big Ten tournament?
That's before the
Oh.
tournament starts, I think.
Bob should be okay with
That's
that.
still
maybe.
regular season, I
Yeah. The madness has not truly begun.
Not yet. March 7th, anybody? Possible?
Okay.
We're talking about the morning, a morning meeting?
9 to noon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like something's going on, not on my calendar, but.
think. Something.
some-
Or
just,
um,
March 7th.
March 14, March 7 and March 14?
Daylight savings,
Well, yeah.
talking about the annual retreat. He's coming to you. Bob takes care of him.
He's the signer.
It's
What,
cool
you don't
guys
want
are-
to, you don't want to stand around and listen to us talk about our calendars?
You can hear this on TV.
Jill, would it be helpful to just throw out 3 or 4 dates and then we can all tell you yay
Well,
or
I'm thinking
nay?
the 7th.
I think the
7th? Nobody's saying no to that.
Oh, okay.
Check with Bob.
Bob, is this March 7th good for you? It's a Saturday? The madness has not begun
Yeah,
officially.
March 7th.
March 7th.
7th
is
sounds good.
All right, we're going to go with March 7th. I'm going to, where would you like it to be? Any city buildings or facilities, out at a park, senior center,
I
Gallup
wouldn't-
Park?
Hathaway's
Right
Hideaway?
Downstairs.
It's just this
The one I was thinking was
cool
the
speakeasy
small
thing.
little building next to
You
the
know,
one
you
that we
gotta
just looked
know-
at.
Jill
Hideaway.
probably knows
That would be
We had
nice.
it there once, we
Hathaway.
had it there
If we can
once, but
get
I
it
guess it
there,
was a while ago.
it's really, I like that building.
I'll have to find out, because when Mary Hathaway was running it, she
Been
didn't
there for a
charge
party.
me for HTC
You
stuff.
can rent it out.
I don't know what her son's policy is. If
Yeah.
there's a fee, we probably can't, because we can use a city facility for free, but I can ask him.
Yeah,
I can ask him. Hathaway's Hideaway, next door to
it's cool,
the Second Ward Public Building.
yeah,
Yes.
I like that
Well,
building.
I'm intrigued.
It's very cool, it's very
It's
cool.
cool.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna ask about that.
Time, like, what did we start at 9?
Yeah, 9 to noon. Anna already invited me
Oh,
to it, so I
wow.
guess that's the date.
Yeah, I just,
I
it was
gonna
in there, it
enter
like popped up.
I was gonna say, I have something on that day already. It's the annual retreat.
Yes, you do. Scheduled.
All right, thank you. I
All
will,
set.
I'll come up with a tentative agenda. If you guys know of items that you really want to talk about, let me know. I've made a list of them throughout the year as they've come up. So I'm going to just kind of distill it down into the ones that seem like the most timely. Or else, if I can't decide, I'll let you vote.
These windows were big last time.
Yeah. March 7th. Okay, thank you.
Approval of minutes?
There's one set of minutes here for January 9.
Does anyone have any issues with the minutes?
Nope.
Okay.
Without objection.
Approved without objection. Reports from commissioners. Are there any reports? Okay, moving on, assignments. The next meeting is Monday, March 9th. Oh, no, March 12th. So
I can
the
probably
committee
do
would be
it.
Monday, March 9th.
Yeah, right, Monday, March 9th. Still at noon.
I can do it
All right,
if no one else is wanting to jump in.
anyone else?
I'm open.
You've done about like the last 3, which is okay,
Last
but-
2, I think, because I
You're doing
was
an excellent job.
before that with Anna. Anna's done the last 2.
I've done a couple,
Yeah.
but he's done 3, so.
You don't know, okay. Okay, yeah, John, we're gonna take you up on that.
March 9th.
Dave and John, March 9th, thank you.
Okay.
Any reports from staff?
Yeah, the staff activities is really boring. Let me know if you have any questions, but lots of radon, not much else. 2 things to report on. I did apply for a new SHPO CLG grant to, what did I apply for a grant for? Oh, to survey 250 properties in the Old Fourth Ward. Yeah, because the Old Fourth Ward was surveyed in the 1980s in a very partial sort of approach, where the significant, really cool buildings, about 125 of those, were surveyed to death, and the rest of them were just kind of put on a map as.
Contributing.
Yeah, and things have changed, and it needs to be resurveyed. It's too old anyway. So the grant is to cover most of that, but they had a limit of 250 properties. So the way I pitched it was, well, if you guys will come in and survey those that have never been done, the city will resurvey the 125 more significant buildings that we already have a lot of history on. So I'll let you know if that comes through. And then the other thing is the Historic Preservation Conference in May. Bob White expressed an interest. If any of you have an interest in attending, I don't think that the brochures are even out yet, but it's always in May. It'll be in Kalamazoo this year. If you'd like to go, let me know, because we can see if we can send 1 or 2 or 3 of you. I'm planning to go, and you can learn a lot. And Kalamazoo is cool, and it has a lot of beer.
I've gone in the past. They're fun,
Yeah.
informative.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it for staff, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any concerns of commissioners?
I have a concern question. So the mural on the side of Aventura says in giant letters, Aventura. Yeah. And we approved the mural, but I don't remember I mean, you had brought this up before, I think, in some.
Yeah, they got tagged, so we approved the mural over all that paint, and then it happened again, and they did paint in big letters Aventura. I don't know if that ever got a sign permit or not. It probably did, because there was a crackdown on that at one point. I don't recall it ever going through the HDC, though,
Yeah, that was
for that revision.
my thought.
Yeah. If it's something that's weighing heavy on your conscience, I'll
No.
look into it.
Not really. I just walked by and went, that's really big lettering.
Yeah, it is.
Any communications?
Old West Side newsletter is in your packet.
There's a good article about the Old West Side Historic District in there. Yeah, Grace Jackman, some very interesting history.
Oh, good. Good, good.
Recommended reading.
Nice.
There being no further business and without objection, I will adjourn the February 13th, 2020 Ann Arbor Historic District Commission meeting.
Thank you.
Well done.
Nice.